Okay, so let's go ahead and let this get all started here. Should be running a couple advertisements, so it's just as usual. We will let that go through for a couple seconds, and of course let a little bit of time to let everything populate a little bit. And I'm just going to do a quick audio check on my end. Yep, that should be fine. That's coming through just clean enough. So this time in the for this live stream, I'm actually using my iPhone here and the iPhone mic to give this a shot and see how this will all work out for the live streams. Like, does the audio come through well? Does it come through better? Also the video. And so far the video seems to be extraordinarily good. We'll see if it's a good fit for the future as well for the audio. I do have a new microphone coming in for myself, and so that we'll also be using that. So, per usual, how we do all the live streams, always feel free to comment in the chat box, the live stream chat, with all of your shakuhachi questions. I am solo today. We do not have my very beloved in-house producer, Linus. But hopefully for the next couple of them, we will be able to have him join us. And we have some things to go over today anyways, and I have some unique topics to talk about, as well as some tips and tricks and all that good stuff, so we should jump right into it. Okay, so pulling up my community tabs here, I do know we have a couple things to go over with the community stuff that I would like to highlight. So let me just open that quickly to posts. All right. So, oh, that's right. We haven't posted the new ones yet. So we haven't posted basically anything in the community tabs for about a week now. And what we do is we actually write all of them in advance. So we do about a month prior to. We'll write about 30 to 35 of them, and then we post it. So right now we're on just a little bit of a break with our kind of daily updates and kind of tips and tricks and questions and polls that we normally would be doing throughout the week and every day. So with that being said, we will have those up shortly. Hopefully by next week we'll have some new stuff there. If you haven't liked this video yet, make sure you like. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you have questions, please write your questions in the box. So I took the family and myself back to America. So today I am filming live from Wisconsin, and I'm looking out into the window and I see absolutely nothing but flat land and a few trees over yonder and a nice frozen lake. So questions have, I've gotten a lot of questions about how do you keep your shakuhachi safe when you travel? What's the best way to travel with them? So we're going to go over that shortly. And then after that, it's, how do you keep your flute safe in a really cold and dry environment? And so we'll also go over that today too. So first and foremost, let's talk about travel. So if you travel with your shakuhachis, there are two ways to go about it. If you're only going to bring a couple of instruments with you, then what I honestly would do, and what I've done in the past, is just throw a couple of them in your backpack, especially if they split into two. Throw a couple of them in your backpack and just bring them as a carry-on, and you won't run into any problems. The inside of the plane does get dry, so if you are concerned about that flute getting a little bit too dry, I would recommend to just blow a little bit of hot air into them before you get onto the plane, wrap them up, seal them up, put them in the bag, and you can put them in the overhead compartment or underneath the seat in front of you. I'm starting to sound a little bit like a flight attendant, so trays up, seat back in the forward position. But in all seriousness, if you can do that, that's the best. Now, let's say you're taking a lot of flutes. Like in my case, I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 flutes with me this time. I'm not going to walk around with 8 flutes in my bag and just have this bulging bag, including with like my laptop and all the other things that I want to bring with me. So what you can do is you can get yourself one of these, which is a shakuhachi case. And what's nice about these is that so this is what they look like on the inside, and they have all of the little straps here to hold the flutes in. And what's also really nice too is that you can also use this part here to hold the flutes up. So when you have like a concert or whatever, you can place the flute and then it holds and acts like a stand. So it's really nice to have this too. But this would be one thing I'd recommend. Of course, keeping all of them in the plastic bag still when you have this, or when you're using this. And when you fly with whatever company you're going to fly with, I locked it in there. If you can actually check this in, and I know some people would say don't check it in or whatever. If you treated your flutes with linseed oil, boiled linseed oil, or if you're playing them all the time and they're, if they're hydrated, I wouldn't worry about it. But just have them put on this, fragile, handle with care. It's not a guarantee that they're always going to handle it with care, but these cases are really sturdy, these hard shell cases. But yeah, you just have them put this on there, and they typically do handle them better when you have that on there. So that's what I would do, and so you can check that in and have it sent off to where you're going, pick it up, and usually it arrives in a crate, so it'll be in a gray crate, not just smashing around with all the other suitcases and stuff like that. And welcome in, Svenja. Yes, thank you. I'm glad that I also made it safe and sound into the great state of Wisconsin. So that's my little tip there. And I think that these travel cases are fantastic, and it would definitely be the way that I would go about it. Shakuhachis just they're not as fragile as like a violin or viola or cello, and stuff like that. So it's fine to check these, especially when you have such a hard shell case like these. Some instruments like double bass typically have to be checked, but they make special cases for double bass and for shipping them, and they're quite intense. And I'm sure they make those for cellos too. But a lot of times, what people do is who are professional musicians that are cellists is they just buy a second seat for their instrument. So the cello has a seat, and then you have a seat. Thank God we do not need to do that for shakuhachi. Our instruments are a lot more compact. So that is my recommendation on that. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about just after that was, okay, so I'm in Wisconsin. I'm in here in the middle of winter. It's going to be really dry every single day. Especially when the weather drops really low. So what do you do to keep your instrument safe day by day? Well, you can kind of see these a little bit over here hanging out. Is that we have actually a lot of plants in this room, and all these plants get watered pretty much daily, if not every other day. And the thing with having plants in the room is that they actually raise up the general humidity, as well as just having a soft humidifier going. So I have both of those. I have about 4 or 5 plants that are in the room, and I personally just like the ambiance of having live plants in a room, especially kind of shrubbery like this. And there's a couple other like flowers that are on the other side of the room, and so having the water in there along with the humidifier keeps the room at a really nice 50-60%, and the flutes are totally fine. I can leave them out. I've got one of my flutes out here already for today's examples and stuff, and it's totally fine. But the same thing that I would always recommend is at the end of the day, you're going to want to put them away in all of the plastic bags and the kimono bags, blowing the hot air in there, so that way you're not worried about you don't have to worry about waking up the next day and finding a bunch of cracked flutes on your shelf or in your collection. So those are the 2 things that I wanted to start out with today. So let's go ahead and pull up one of the things that I had on my Discord as well, because I had a couple questions there that I wanted to look at. And of course, in the meantime, always feel free to ask questions in the live chat. If you don't have any questions, that's fine too. Let me see here, pulling up this. As far as why I'm in America, well, I'm in America for a couple reasons. So first thing is that there's a bunch of collaborative projects that are coming up, and I suppose I can mention one of those while I'm searching for these these technical questions for shakuhachi. And I do have to make an announcement about our next set of giveaways that we're going to be doing as well. Okay. Now, so some of the things that are coming up in America are, I'm working with the composer Daniel Asia. And one of the things that we are currently working on is this project called the Mirrors of the Cosmos. And this is going to be a new concerto for shakuhachi and orchestra. And we're searching for an orchestra and a conductor who's interested in having this piece composed and performed. And so me being in America, we have some meetings to go to and stuff like that. In addition, there are some musicians that are in Wisconsin that I really want to work with. I have a lot of previous composition teachers and a lot of music teachers here that I worked with when I was a kid that I'd like to see again and, you know, update them. I also have some schools that I'll be going to lecture and talk to them about Japanese music and playing the shakuhachi. And so I want to be here for all of that. In addition, we have some other things that are happening and going on as well. My wife is pregnant again with our third child. So we did need just a little bit of extra hands on deck during some of the tough periods of the pregnancy. And we have two very, very rambunctious children. And we needed to have a little bit of grandma time to help out with all of that. So let's get into some of the questions here. And again, of course, if you have any further questions or you want me to elucidate more on these, feel free to write that into the chat below. Take a sip of coffee and then we will go on to our questions. Okay. So the first thing is, how does the embouchure of the shakuhachi differ from that of the Western flute, and how does it affect sound production? So I'm not a Western flutist, but I've taught enough people who were Western flutists that I can see how they approach the shakuhachi, and I can see that with Western flute players, they're a lot more interested in creating a balance from how much air is going over the flute and inside the flute. Where if you're a shakuhachi player who uses the sotobuki blowing style, which is primarily what I teach, and what the I find the kinko players do, many of the other modern players as well. Most modern players are doing sotobuki. Uchibuki seems to be a little bit of an older style, which is kind of blowing inside the flute, and it's a lot more medi. So we do both, but this is kind of like, I'm guessing, more of a general question on how, you know, we're making, like, you know, when we do like a roll buki, like that sound there, we're blowing more over the flute like we would a bottle, right? Like an empty beer bottle. And when we do that, we get a lot more rich overtones. And with that as well, we're also looking for the sawari, the noise of the instrument. We like to have some of that airiness, some of the whistly sounds. All of those things are really an integral part of Japanese music. The tone color and all the different colors that are associated with a single note. So when we play a musical phrase, it's not just it's not just like, here's a note, here's a note, here's a note, and here's how they function in a phrase. Rather, it's here's a note and here's its individual color. Here's a note, and this note also has its own individual color. Now hear how these two colors relate to each other. And that's really important about Japanese music. So I think that would be the difference for our sound production between the Western flute and the classical Japanese flute. Okay, lesson 20. Shoden, wasn't sure if he, Mary, has hole 5 open or not. Yeah, so he, Mary should have the 5th hole, which is the back hole here, closed. So the regular note he is 1, 2, and 5. And in order to get it Mary, we have to do two things. We have to lower the head and then cover the 4th hole, basically 3/4 hole. And what I recommend for the students is to, when they're playing he, Mary, is that you keep the 1st and the 2nd hole of the shakuhachi open. And the reason why is because on the first and the second hole, if you close it when we're in the con register, it raises the pitch up. So we'll do this, right? You can hear how that note lowers by lifting up those. So when you're playing, for example, I think lesson 20 is Kojo no Tsuki. That's much easier than just with those 1 and 2 down. You have to really pull the head down into a very low position to get that note in tune. There is a trade-off though. When you have the 1 and 2 open, the tone color isn't as warm and full. But I mean, it's such a small difference. So if I play here, I mean, I don't even know if the camera can pick up the microphone can pick it up, take all the 1s and 0s, translate it over thousands of miles, and put it into your ears where you can hear the difference between the two. So I almost wanted to say kind of scratch it, scratch that. It's not important, but what's more important is that which one is going to help you play more in tune. And I think that lifting up the 1 and 2 is a much better option. Now, conversely, if you play in the lower register and you play that same thing, the 1 and the 2 lower the pitch. So remarry, you want to have 1 and 2 closed. So isn't that fun? That it's like, why on earth does that do what it does? And shakuhachi is a very interesting instrument. So thank you so much for that question, Brian. And we'll feel free to ask more. And thank you so much for your membership and being a part of the YouTube membership here. So we are going to be giving away more flutes in the future. I'm about ready to place an order for them, and we're going to be giving away probably about 4 or 5 flutes again. I have to see what's in stock. We've been selling so many of those beginner flutes that we're really running low, and there's I was asking Yozan, asked him to send me some more, and he's like, well, I would like to have some of them in my shop. It's like, I understand that, because you got to be able to show some of them and have them there to be able to sell when people come in person. So I think he's feverishly making some new beginner flutes so that we can have them as well to do giveaways. So I'm going to get those purchased, and I will let you guys know in a future live stream. So how do you have a chance to win these flutes? Thank you so much for asking. It's a great question. What you do is you join the membership on this YouTube. And so what you're going to do is below this video, there's a join button. If you hit that join button, another part will open up, and a little screen will open up. You'll have the Shoden Trial. You'll get 1 ticket there. Shoden Lesson Series, 2 tickets. The Chuden Lessons, which are 5 tickets, and the Okuden, which is 10. And after that, we have even something that's even more new, which is the Advanced Music course. So this is contemporary music and some advanced honkyoku. It's still in the process right now. This one will give you 20 tickets if you're a part of this membership. It is $50 per the month, which includes all of the other things before. The first lesson on there is Haru no Umi. The second lesson on there is Yamamoto Hozan's Kari. And then the third one on there is Burning Roots Sketch Number 1, which is an original piece by myself, and I'll be uploading, I think, a few more of my original pieces up there as well for lesson content, which will most likely include Inside My Pine Viewing Room and a Folding Fan, Kabuto Mushi Uta, and Jikan. So if you're interested in playing contemporary music, and if you want to make a request for a specific piece that you've always been wanting to learn, you can ask it in the advanced music course, and I'd be happy to add that in there. It's the only one where I will be taking requests for what pieces I'll be teaching in the future. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to our next question. Okay, what is the role of the finger spacings on the shakuhachi? Okay, so a little bit of a weird way of asking this question, but there are a couple ways to put the holes in a flute. So there is the modern hole placement system. There is Kyuhan-wari, To-wari, and Juhan-wari or Tohan-wari. So the modern way that we tune this is actually the Chis are going to be lower, right? This note is this particular hole. Sorry, not this hole. This hole here is particularly placed lower, so it's closer to the second hole in order to make the Chi easier to play. Now you still have to lower the head a little bit, or you still have to be slightly in the medi position, have that Chi in tune, typically on flutes. But in this case, the reason why we have the hole placements like this is because we want to be able to play closer to the Western music standard. And there are some advantages to it and disadvantages. I think the greatest advantage of having the flute like this is it's very easy to play in the Miyakobushi scale. So the primary scale that we use today with this, it's very easy to play the three variations of that are commonly found in home kyoku on this style flute with the hole placements here. Now, the Kyuhan-wari, To-wari, and Tohan-wari, or Juhan-wari, I don't know how they would say that, is basically it's a percentage of the flute's length, and basically Kyuhan-wari means 9.5, and so every 9.5 portions of the flute, right, like the Juhan-wari would be a tenth, right, or To-wari is the tenth of a flute, right, so all the holes are equally spaced based on the numeral 10. Kyuhan-wari is based on 9.5, and then Tohan-wari is 10.5. And the reason for that is, well, they do create different tone colors, and there's a different way of approaching the flute too. I'm not sure if historically, like when they're making these flutes and they're thinking, I'm going to make a Tohan-wari versus a Kyuhan-wari, if there was a specific reason why they were choosing that style. Maybe it was because just of how they thought the bamboo would probably resonate better. But the whole entire tuning process of those, you would think that the holes would make a huge difference, in which they do. But what actually changes pitch and tone a lot is actually how you work with the fushi, the nodes on the inside of the flute. So it could be hand position. It could also just be for the movable chi. So when you have in a To-wari flute, the chi is a lot more flexible. And of course, too, the utiguchi would have been different in that time period too. It would be a lot more shallow, which makes it a lot easier to move the notes medi and kari and so on. So lots there. It's a really, really deep question when you start to get into it, and perhaps we should have Nick Belando as a guest on our show one of these days, and have him kind of go a little bit over making flutes, and we can ask him some questions about that. So I will make a note of that. Svenja says, I've already learned the Pine Viewing Room. It's so awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I think you're the only person so far outside of myself who has learned how to play that piece. So congratulations on that. And you do a very good job on it too. Okay. All right. So the next question is about tuning. And we kind of talked about that with those different pitches with the chi being higher. Okay, and how is it achieved? Okay, so in Shakuhachi playing, what is the significance of koro koro and how is it played? Okay, so koro koro is an onomatopoeia, which means it's a sound that like when we read comic books in English and you see it says like pow, whap, slam, boom. All of those sort of things are onomatopoeias, and it's the sound or the word of that sounds like that specific sound effect. So koro koro can be a lot of things. It can be rolling rocks. It can be kind of like a babbling brook. It can do a lot of different sounds that it could be like. It could be the sound of bamboo hitting each other, which is like a light kind of bouncing off of each other. Could be like a koro koro. So it definitely has like a very strong sense of like nature imagery involved with it. And so, of course, there's that famous phrase, koro koro hachinen, which is that it takes 8 years to develop a good koro koro. And I think that that's just ridiculous. But at any rate, the koro koro effect is pretty simple. in terms of its basic mechanics. All you're doing is you have all of the top holes covered on the shakuhachi, back hole is open. You lift up the first hole, you set down on the first hole, you lift up the second hole, and then you set down the second hole, and you repeat that motion. And what you're doing is you're getting 3 separate pitches, all kind of microtonally tuned to each other. So it kind of sounds like a really depressed ambulance when you play it that slow. But when you speed it up, you get that sound. And it's also a medi technique. So if you have the head dip down a little bit deeper, you get a kind of a rounder, more bubbly sound. And of course, you can move it up a little bit and kind of mess around a little bit with in terms of how midi you want to go. It's not technically that pitch specific, but it should be somewhere centered around a C pitch, which is the same as re. So when you end on that one note, like you have like koro 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 ko, that ko should be close to re, or if not the same pitch as re. And so on and so forth afterwards. But that's the gist of the koro koro technique. Okay. A lot of making questions this time. How does the bore shape of the shakuhachi influence its overall sound and resonance? Yeah, this is going to be a question more for someone like Nick. I'm not a maker, so I won't be able to tell you too much. But the choke point has a lot to do with it, especially on modern instruments. Some flutes don't have a choke point, and they have a very balanced sound. And sound beautiful. When you have the nodes in there, that also makes a huge difference as well. So I'm going to save that question, and we'll bring it on to Nick. All right, so what are the different techniques that are used for shakuhachi playing to do vibrato? So there are a bunch of different ways that we can do vibrato on the shakuhachi. And they all are basically categorized as yuri, which means shake. Yuri comes from the word yurasu. And you have like a yoko yuri, which is a side to side. You have a tate yuri, which is up and down. You have a mawashi, which is a circular yuri. You have a technique called tsuki, which means thrusting. And then you have the Western style vibrato, and then you have a take yuri. So those are, let's kind of just show you them briefly. The yoko yuri, right, side to side. Tate, up and down. The mawashi, kind of a circular rounding. The mawashi means to go around. The take yuri is one where you move the bamboo. Then you can move that kind of faster. But I like this technique, which is called tsuki. It means to thrust, and it's where you actually push the flute into the face. And you get that kind of sound. And one of my favorite players is Minamoto Unkai. And he would do stuff like that, where he'd play. It's a very beautiful sound, and so if you like that kind of tsuki technique, I do find that it sounds and works a lot better on older flutes. The modern flutes, sometimes it can be a little bit silly. Just depends on how you approach the technique, but I do like tsuki. And then the last one is the diaphragmatic vibrato. But the only reason why I really don't use that one at all, and I don't like the way it sounds on the shakuhachi, because I think it loses its character, and it starts to sound more like a Native American flute than it does a shakuhachi at that point. So I usually advise students to avoid using the Western one. All right. Svenja says one on example for it. Are you saying like you want an example of in my pine viewing room? We can definitely do that. Can you explain the difference between the different materials used? Why are you guys have so many questions about construction? So different types of materials. Well, of course, bamboo is the best, madake. I find that has the best sound, especially when we're talking about jinashi stuff. I like flutes that have been made out of carbon fiber. I think that that's been the most successful out of all the sound palettes besides resin. And resin flutes are, I'm very impressed with the sound of resin flutes. Metal, not so much. I'm not a big fan of the metal flutes. That's all I'll say about that kind of stuff. Okay, let's look at some other questions here. Skip that one. How key cut? Oh, in terms of acoustics, why does the shakuhachi pitch tend to fluctuate with environmental changes? So actually on the Taidu tips videos, there was a little tip that I did in one of those where I talked about that, where when things are when the environment is hot and humid, sound moves faster through the column of the instruments, why the sound is more instantaneous. And of course, the opposite is also true too. The sound will go slower through the tube when it is colder and not as humid. So that it's basically that's why that happens. But yeah, it's a good question. But I would recommend taking a look at the Taidu tips one. Let me pull up that video really quickly, and then I can share that here, because I think that's a really good question. So if you're ever really struggling some morning, like oh man, I really just can't play, and you're just not all the things are coming through the way you want it to, it might be because of that. All right, it's getting loud. Maybe I don't know which one that's in. I have to actually figure it out. I think that it might be done, or it might be in the quick warm-up. Like, help, I need a quick warm-up. I think it is. Yes, it is. Okay. So, I will post it here. There you go. So, I hope that helps for those who asked that question. Okay. So, next question. Let's see. About the angle for when the player blows against the shakuhachi, how does it affect sound and intonation? So when we play in the shakuhachi, it's not just a matter of holding up the instrument higher or lower, lowering the head and raising the head. There's another angle that has to be considered when playing, and that is what is the relationship between the utaguchi and the lower lip. So if you place the flute here and it's really close to that lower lip, you're going to get like kind of dark and kind of muddy sound. And in order to get that in tune, you have to really bring the flute down. And when you do that, by bringing the bell of the instrument down, of course you raise the pitch, but it becomes maybe too airy and thin in the tone quality. So instead of doing something like this, you come back here and you raise the flute up vertically like this. And you can hear it's like, yeah, that's still a little bit low. Just raise it up a little bit. And then there's that sound. And then you have a much better, more resonant, full sound on the shakuhachi. So that's the big one there. Okay. We had actually a really good question last week about the con register and bringing the con register up and having to lower the head a little bit to bring the utiguchi closer to the face. That was another really good one. Circular breathing, another question. I think we've gone over that a lot. It's not necessary for the shakuhachi. And it's just not traditional either. It messes with the ma of the music. The space and time, and you want the circular nature of, or cyclical nature of the shakuhachi in the music to be present. Okay, I'm sorry, skipping through some questions here. Okay, so when to know when to use a longer flute or a shorter flute. So let's say if we talk about contemporary music for just a moment, and we say a lot of contemporary music tends to sit around the 1.6 and the 1.8, though not exclusively. I find that most of the contemporary music that I've performed is either on the 1.6 or the 1.8. With the exception of a piece like Kaze no Uta by Sawai Tadao, the original score has it notated as for a 2.1, which is on B. But I transpose it up half step, and I play it on a 2.0, and so my koto player also tunes to that and just plays the piece as before. So it's more centered around an F in its main key rather than a D. Or G rather, has kind of a G centered, sometimes has a D centered tonality to it as well. So it's kind of F and C in the on the score when you play it on a 2.0. The thing is with like the 1.6, when you play pieces on a 1.6, the pitch is a lot more stable on the shoulder flutes, and the 1.6 tends to speak better, meaning that it sounds more clear over and against the koto, especially when you're playing a leading role. So like when you play Hara no Umi, you can play Hara no Umi on a 1.8, but it doesn't project as well as the 1.6. Like those high notes in the 1.6 really cut through the texture of the koto, and it's easier for the audience member to hear you. Another piece, for example, is Mutsura Boshi, which is by Nagasawa Katsutoshi. It's on a 1.6, and if you play that piece on a 1.8, which you can, it just doesn't cut through as well. Especially when you have all these fast lines and these rhythmic passages, you need the notes to speak right away. And I think that's the advantage and why a lot of composers in the past have used the 1.6 over the 1.8. Yamamoto Hozan's pieces, for example, even some of his solo works, he writes, play it on a 1.6, but if you would like, play it on a 1.8, but I'm intending it to be a 1.6. But so why is the purpose of using the 1.6 instead? And it's to cut through the texture of the koto and to be able to project farther so that audience members can hear you. Now, the 1.8 can do that just fine as well, but I think the 1.6 is superior at it. It has a more instantaneous sound too. It's easier to get like techniques like double tonguing to happen, to be more clear, and so on and so forth. That being said, though, there are plenty of pieces that utilize different sizes of shakuhachi for their compositions. Okay, little insert quickly. If you haven't liked this video yet, like this video. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions about shakuhachi, please write it into the top chat or the live chat on the right side or just below this video. Taking all questions about shakuhachi or other things too. My favorite pie, that's a hard one. I probably have to go with apple pie, maybe cherry pie if it's with a really good like vanilla ice cream scoop. Can definitely dig that. If you're interested in winning a flute, we give away flutes on this channel a lot. You'll need to sign up for the membership. There are 4 classic levels that we've been using, which is the Shoden Trial. It kind of gets your feet wet, as it was the proverbial feet and toes are wet with shakuhachi. Then you have the full Shoden course. That means you're in it to win it. Then you have the Chuden, which is the middle level, and then we have the Okuden, which is the advanced level. And then we have, after that, a new course, which is the advanced music course. So the lowest level gives you 1 ticket for the raffle. The second level gives you 2 tickets. The third level gives you 5 tickets. The fourth level 10. And then the newest level, the 5th level, gives you 20 tickets towards winning a Yozan flute. We give away the flutes typically on the last Monday of the month of that giveaway. And if you've won before, you can't win again. And I think that's about it for all the things that we have coming up for advertisement stuff and things that are related to the channel. Community posts will continue soon, and so on and so forth. Hopefully next week we'll be able to get Linus, my in-house producer, to join us. We'll be probably using StreamYard for that, but not sure yet. However, it does feel a little bit lonely to not have someone here to banter with a little bit. However, we can get kind of off topic sometimes. So now, like when I'm doing the solo, it is a lot easier to stay shakuhachi driven. And let me give you an example, since I'm here and I have my flutes right next to me. Maybe we can take a look at one of those contemporary pieces, and I'll show you what it sounds like on the 1.6 versus the 1.8, and then we can kind of discuss. That might be the way to use some of our time here. So let's do that. So I'm going to use my handy dandy trusty GRE 1.8 that I always have been using for the past 7 years now. I think it has been. Maybe it's just been 6 years. And then I'm also going to be using my Yozan 1.6. So the same maker, same quality of, same level of instrument, I should say. Both are the highest quality Yozan that you can get. And let's take a look at the opening of Yamamoto Hozan's Geese, since that is one of the pieces that I'm teaching on the advanced music course, and not a lot of people know that piece, or they're unaware of it. So the piece has this really beautiful opening where it has these sliding up figures, and so it starts like this. Okay, so that's the opening of the piece. And so let me reflect on it as somebody who has played this piece multiple times over many, many years. Playing it on the 1.8, there's a nice depth and resonance to the notes. However, it doesn't feel as lively as on the 1.6. There's also, it seems like it's harder to get some of those really fast double tongue sections to speak clearly. It'd have to be something I work on a little bit more. And also, having drinking a lot of coffee today, my mouth is a little bit dry, so it has even a further barrier to making the sounds I want to make. So let's say if I play the same exact thing now on the 1.6. So my reflection of that is I actually feel like I get more dynamic range on the 1.6, and I also get more clarity for the notes. Now, the drawback to it is maybe the depth and resonance of the longer notes aren't as significant because I'm on a shorter flute. Now, let's say if I play the next line, right, which is a little bit more of a melodic line. So let's do these 4 measures here. And, you know, maybe it's just me and knowing the piece and having a little bit more of an intimate relationship with it, but the brightness of it seems like the piece is a little bit more approachable to the audience member, to the listener. And so I like the sound, the quality of that sound on the shorter flute, and I think it fits the character of the piece better. Now, so let's say if I look at one of the faster passages here. Okay, move it back over to here to the shorter flute. To me, that just adds a dead giveaway that it sounds better. There's a lot more clarity to it. Now, I'm sure that if I push a little bit harder on this, on the 1.8, perhaps I can get like a... But then I feel like I'm losing the resonance of the tone of the instrument, and it starts to sound just a little bit more pinched. And pinched isn't always the best, thing that we're not always trying to look for that. Sometimes it's nice, but I don't think it's what this piece is requesting or what sounds best on it at all. And again, even if I, like when we get to these high, like there's a lot of sections in this piece too, which like utilize a lot of high notes. So we kind of go... And those high notes, I don't think they have as much of like an intense feeling like when we're on the 1.6. But then again, it's also really high notes. But I think that that's part of it too. Like playing those really high notes on the 1.6, just that whole step up makes a huge difference for this piece. Okay, let's take a look at, let's see. We can look at Nagasawa's piece. Look at Mayudama no Uta for a second. So, for example, in Mayudama no Uta, we have this famous line. So because we have such this nice, long, beautiful melody, I think the resonance of the 1.8 works better. Let's listen to the 1.6 now. So, like, there's some nice qualities about the 1.6, and there's some things I like. I love the clarity of it, and again, this might just be me being very intimate with the piece, and I've decided and I've come to the conclusion that it sounds best on the 1.8. It's written for the 1.8. I've performed it with the 1.8, but I do find that because of these kind of long soaring melodies that are so prominent in this piece, that the 1.8 is a better fit. And maybe you could even get away with doing it on a 1.9 and get even a little bit more resonance out of the music as well. So instead of it being in G minor as a primary throughout the piece, it would be more closely related to like a G flat minor, and which is very easy for us to do both on the koto and on the shakuhachi. But my concern would be then when we get to places, if you start to go like even like to 2.0, is that when we get to the parts of the music where you have fast double tonguing, that's not going to come through as cleanly as it would on the 1.8. Now here though, like those high notes, don't always sound like it doesn't fit the piece as well based on what comes prior to, with all these nice, again, long soaring melodies. So I could probably go on and on about that with the differences on the size of the instruments and, you know, why we pick certain sizes and whatnot. But in terms of contemporary music, it's a little bit easier because it's already decided for you. The composer's already put that into thought, and they've chosen a length that best represents their piece. Sometimes you can change it, like I said before, with Sawai Tadao's Kaze no Uta. I prefer it on a 2.0. I think that just that little bit of extra clarity goes a long way compared to the 2.1 performances that I've heard. As far as honkyoku goes, you have to experiment a lot, because a lot of pieces can be played. Hon Shirabe, for example, can be played on any size flute, and I think it sounds pretty. I think you can even pull it off on a 1.1. So Choshi on a 1.1, maybe that should be a thing. Someone should start making some videos of all of the honkyoku on 1.1 size flutes. But like a piece like Ryobo, I think Ryobo is the longer the flute, the better. So lots to consider there. Great question. If there's anybody who has a specific question about a piece and, you know, what length they that I would recommend or that I like for that, I'd be happy to go over that as well. So thank you for all those who are watching that joined us for the live stream today. A little bit quieter today, which is totally fine. Gives me a chance to kind of listen to myself think out loud and go, that doesn't sound right, and kind of work out some ideas on my own. Again, if you haven't liked this video yet, please like this video. If you are not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in winning a flute, join the membership and all the videos that go along with that. Let's see. Great live. 6:40 in Japan, however, great start of the day. Yes, it is pretty early in Japan. I actually have a student at 8 o'clock Japan time, so what I was considering doing is maybe trying to do 7 a.m. Japan time, which would be, I think my video went out. I think my camera might be overheated or something like that. Well, at any rate, it's back now, so I don't know what happened there. That was weird. But anyways, yeah, so I was thinking about maybe doing like a start time at 4 p.m. In Central Time, and that would be 7 a.m. Japan. So it's a little bit more feasible, and I think we'll be able to join or have Linus join us for that 7 a.m. time. If it doesn't work out, then what I'll for some reason, I don't think that will be the case. Maybe I can have Nick join us, because I know that Nick is alive and well at that time of day, and we can ask him some of those questions on a construction of the shakuhachi, and I think that'd be a great benefit for all of us. So, with that being said, thank you all so much for joining in. Here's a quick question on length. So since you have the 1.6 and the 1.8 out, will you help me which length is right for the Yasuo song from League? Use the 1.8. The 1.8 is the correct size for that opening, and a lot of it is actually really similar to the like Shika no Tone opening. So they're using the second octave of the 1.8 in that one, which is that sort of sound. So there you have that. So yeah, use the 1.8 second octave. All right, so with that all being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. If you are interested in lessons and all that kind of good stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys next week for another live stream. Take care and roll for